This episode of the Restoration Today podcast is brought to you by alleviate. alleviate is the all-in-one operating system designed specifically for restoration businesses like yours. It's the CRM that has everyone talking. With alleviate, you'll have everything you need in one streamlined platform. From CRM to data analytics and automation, alleviate provides tailored solutions that cater to your unique needs. So say goodbye to the hassle of managing multiple apps and hello to the convenience of having all your essential functions all in a single, user-friendly platform. Check out alviware.com to book your demo today. Hey restorers, thanks for checking out this episode of the Restoration Today podcast. We are in cat season. Today we are talking about cat response and kind of helping with the portable storage needs that you might have while responding to a cat, whether it's far away or it's close to home, any sort of situation, even a large loss. I mean, that can feel like you're in a cat zone depending on the large loss that you're working on. So we're going to talk about storage and some of the options there today. I'm joined by a longtime friend of the industry to me, Greg Coulombe. We've known each other for I don't know how long at this point, probably since one of my very first shows in the industry, and Chris Camasta. They are both with Unit Storage. So gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. Chris, I'm going to toss it over to you first to kind of introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background in the industry, because I really want listeners to understand that both of you have really rich backgrounds in the industry as well. Like, it's not just portable storage. You both understand the industry from a number of angles. So Chris, go for it.
Sure. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for having us, and hello, listeners. Chris Camasta, I'm the VP of Business Development for Units Moving and Portable Storage, which I've been with the company now for about 3 years. But to Michelle's point, really where my background is in the restoration industry. So I started off when I was about 17 years old, working as a gopher for a local restoration company up in Northern Illinois. Worked as, a mitigation tech, a water restoration tech, moved up to a division manager. I had a stint with Allstate Insurance, actually on their catastrophe team as a catastrophe adjuster. Did a lot of hail claims up in northern Minnesota in the middle of the winter, which is, for those of you up in Minnesota, that's a good time to climb around roofs. And then, had my own restoration company in northern Illinois for a couple of years, and decided to then move into corporate America and worked for Service Master Restore. Actually started off at Service Master with Furniture Medic, which is another franchise division that they own, and kind of running their national account program designed to work with insurance carriers and designed to work with restoration providers. So I was really able to take all the things I had learned over the years doing water losses, fires, contents, mold, biohazard, and kind of apply that in that role. And then I was lucky enough to be promoted to Service Master Restore as one of their sales representatives. And so from there, I was then recruited by Units, and I've been here ever since. So excited to be talking to you today.
Awesome. Okay, Greg, go for it.
Hey, thanks, Michelle. So as Michelle said, we've known each other probably, since 2013, I think we first met. So when I got off active duty, I got into kitchen and bathroom modeling. I did that for many years, and that's how I got into the restoration industry on that side. Where I lived, you couldn't, the water mitigators couldn't do the build back. So the adjusters would go with remodelers. So that's how I learned about Xactimate and everything. I did that for many years. And then I went to work for Armstrong World Industries, their corporate office, managing national accounts. And then after that, I went to Lowe's corporate headquarters, and I managed everything restoration and construction for them. And that's where Michelle and I met at all the trade shows. After that, Service Master recruited me, and I was working with Service Master Corporate for about 4 years as a national account manager. That's where I met Chris. And then I've been with Units now for almost a full year. So excited to be here, and definitely appreciate you having me on the show today, Michelle.
It's great to see you. I remember when I first saw you at a Units booth, I looked at you and I was like, wait, that's not what I expected. I didn't. Anyway, so, okay, for restorers who aren't familiar, Chris, explain what Units is.
Yeah, so Units, we're a nationwide franchise-owned portable storage provider. So, we have 16-foot containers, all steel containers, and then we also have, many of our franchises also have 12-foot containers. So most restorers and most people have seen a lot of our competitors on the street before. We're very similar, but also very different in many ways in comparison to our competitors with our delivery capabilities, our containers, and the service that we're able to provide.
Perfect. Okay. So let's step into cat loss a little bit here. So Greg, I'll toss this to you first.
Sure.
How do you specifically partner with restoration contractors that are going into cat zones? Like, we're recording this a week after Idalia, was that the hurricane name, was heading into Florida, which ended up being a dud, which is, good for people who live there, maybe not so good for our industry, which is a terrible thing to say, but it's true. So what does the mobilization look like, and how do you partner with contractors in a cat situation?
Sure. So there's multiple ways that we can help out the restoration industry during cat. So it's kind of a three-pronged approach. So first would be, let's say a restoration company in Minneapolis is reacting down to Florida. So they don't have the trucking capability because they have to keep their equipment back behind, right? So they can utilize one of our units, pack everything in there, all their equipment, all their materials they need, have it shipped to one of our local franchise locations and have it either stored there, or we can deliver it right to the job site or a community where they're doing commercial work. So that's one approach. The other approach could be they get into market and then they work with one of our local franchises to where we can provide units for them for pack outs and so forth. So that's an option for them to be able to do contents. And then another option is for them to be able to have units be delivered. They load them up, we bring it back to our warehouse, and we can do long-term storage for them while the house gets rebuilt, especially like after Harvey. I think, in 2016, Harvey did so much damage that some people were displaced for months, right? So it's not a quick, easy in and out, it's, you got to dry, use the antimicrobials. So you'd have to store the stuff in a climate-controlled environment, such as one of our warehouses. So those are just a few of the ways that we can help, restorers.
How big are your warehouses? Like, I'm sure that they're all different, but I'm curious, how big are your warehouses that you can fit these massive boxes in there and it's climate controlled? Chris, go for it.
Yeah, so as part of our franchise agreement, in order for any units to become a franchise, the minimum is right around 20,000 square feet. So that is the minimum. Now, we also have some facilities that have up to 50,000 square feet. Just depends on the marketplace. But you're right. For these containers being 16 foot by 8 foot by 8 foot high, you need a decent amount of space, right? A warehouse facility space to fit all of those and then to be able to shift them around. It's just like, it's funny because when doing restoration, I remember, even at my location or all the locations I used to work with, the wooden storage crates. Right? Those take up a decent amount of space and you can stack them 2 to 3 high depending on, it's the same thing for our units containers. They're just bigger, they're steel, right? And you have to have the space in each one of our locations. That's the beauty of units in comparison to a lot of our competitors. And we have locations up and down the eastern seaboard and then also on the west coast as well, where, east coast is generally where the hurricanes are hitting when we're talking about hurricane cats.
Yeah.
And each one of our locations has to have a facility in order to store. So that is a big competitive advantage that we have available to the restoration industry.
So do you have a national cat team as well as the individual franchisees, or like, how does that work together? And do some of the franchisees help others if a certain area is getting hit by a cat? Like, how do the logistics work for the entire company?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we have actually, it's basically Greg and I, and we also have David Glenn on the national team. And so part of our process, when we know a storm is coming in, we have a national account program where we partner with a lot of nationwide restoration companies. So we are making it a point to reach out to our corporate contacts. If we have a contact list for that client, we're also reaching out to their franchises, letting them know that we're available and ready to assist. We do have where our franchises will work together at the local level. In fact, last year down in the Tampa, Sarasota area, we had franchises shipping in containers from out of state to our local franchise owner to help them. And then what we've also done from a corporate perspective as of recently, it's challenging, and this just isn't for units, it's for the portable storage industry. Once you build these containers, you generally don't want to unbuild them and lay them flat again, right? Because of seals and everything. You can, but you can have problems as a result of that. So when you start talking about shipping in containers from other areas, if they're unbuilt, fine. We can load, up to 15 on a flatbed trailer, get them into the marketplace, no problem. If they're built, it's only 3. And as I'm sure you can imagine, it becomes very costly to a potential client for us to ship in a bunch of containers. But one of the things that we've done now also as a corporation is we actually have a stock available to our franchises as well, like an emergency stock specifically designed for cat response that we can ship into an area relatively easily and get them into the marketplace. But our franchises work very closely together. We have, several franchises in Florida. Florida always seems to be, unfortunately, that state that gets hit pretty hard. And so they can work together to provide the services needed for the restoration industry when that happens as well.
Okay, Greg, you touched on Xactimate a little bit ago. How does billing work for portable storage? Can you bill for it? Is there a max number of days you can bill for? Do adjusters give pushback? All those nice, juicy questions about getting paid for the storage that you have and we're providing.
So, yes, great question. I will defer to the Xactimate expert for the team when it comes to that.
Okay. So, Xactimate, I've been working with Xactimate for years now, and it's interesting, right? So Xactimate does have line items in for portable storage. There's about 13 altogether. Now, the key to remember for any restoration provider is selecting the right Xactimate code, right? That's for anything at Xactimate, right? To make sure that it's being effective. And the easiest way is just in the item description, if you pop up the Xactimate codes, you will see like a Connex style, like a shipping container. And then you will also see one that looks more like a portable storage container, like a units container. Okay. It's the ones that look like our containers. Those are the line item codes for our industry, not just units. It's our industry. And if you actually look in the item description, it'll say, it'll have a bunch of information of what's all included. And it'll say things like units, units, pack rat, pods, and I think U-Pack all are listed in the actual Xactimate code. So that's the way to understand that they picked the right code. That's the first step. And how it works is the container itself is billed on a monthly basis. Okay. Now, as we all know in Xactimate, when you're talking to the insurance industry, it's not uncommon to hear adjusters say you cannot adjust the pricing at all in Xactimate.
Yep.
Well, the key when it comes to portable storage, if you look at that Xactimate line item, it specifically says that prices are going to vary and may need to be adjusted. Okay, and that's a critical piece for the restoration providers to understand, because how the line items work in Xactimate, we are one of 4 companies, the 4 companies I just named, that actually data feeds directly into Xactimate, and Xactimate basically creates a clustered average, is what they call it, of all of those different providers, just how they do a lot of other line items, I'm sure, right? Xactimate's a great system, but it's not going to say this is exactly what units costs or pods or pack rat. It's going to be an average of all of them. And so that's important for the restoration provider to know. We are highly competitive with our pricing in Xactimate, and very often units, especially when we're talking about national account partners, because we have specific pricing for those partners, we're actually going to be less than Xactimate for the container portion. But that's only one component of the Xactimate piece of the pie. There's also deliveries, right? Because we have delivery charges. And if you'll notice in Xactimate, it says there's, again, I think 3 different delivery charges. The easiest way is just look at the picture. That'll tell you which one's the correct one. But it also has in there, it says one way. So for a restoration provider, your quantity that you add into your line item should at a minimum be 2, meaning we're going to deliver the container empty and then we're going to take it back empty, right? Or we're going to bring it back to our facility. Basically, however many times we're going to move that container for that job, they're going to have to add a quantity to it. And that's how it works in Xactimate. So all of it's billable through Xactimate. And there is flexibility built within the system for the individual portable storage provider that they're working with. And it says it, when an adjuster says, oh, you can't adjust the pricing in Xactimate. That's not true, right? We all know that sometimes they treat Xactimate like the gospel, and what the gospel says, that's it, right? Well, the gospel says you might have to adjust pricing based on the provider. And so that allows the flexibility as well, because look, our franchises will go the distance for our restoration partners. Sometimes we go 50, 60, 70 miles, right? The delivery prices in Xactimate aren't going to account for that. Now, the other thing that it doesn't account for is Xactimate, unfortunately, only has where the container is on site, right? But as you know, we can actually store them at our warehouse facilities too, right? It doesn't cost much more, maybe an extra $10, $20, $30 a month. It's marginal, right? But that's not in Xactimate, so that's where you may have to adjust the pricing. And the beauty, again, of using us against like a portable or a self-storage facility, right? Think about all the extra labor that goes into taking items to a self-storage facility, loading your truck, unloading your truck, bringing it to the facility, possibly loading it again if the contents need to be cleaned, right? Reloading. I mean, every time you, like, I remember this, right? I was told this in my restoration days. The more that you touch a person's items, the higher the likelihood something's going to get broken. So what if you could pack up a container? We can take it for you. Heck, we can even deliver it right to your facility if you need to clean it. You can use it as a deodorization chamber too, right? So there's all these efficiencies that we can create. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute here, but there are ways to leverage these containers and utilize Xactimate and be able to bill all through there to the insurance carrier. I know that was a very long-winded answer, but you know, there's definitely some components to Xactimate and when it comes to portable storage that I definitely want to convey to your audience, because people a lot of times will go into Xactimate and be like, well, your container is so much more. And it's like, well, you're looking at the wrong line item code. And that's the key.
Well, that was all important information. And I feel like restorers, no matter what they're using, this is almost the number one question they have is, well, how do I get paid for it? And how much pushback am I going to get? And all of that. So you actually you wrote a really good, complete answer. So I appreciate that. And restorers will appreciate that. So walking right into the next question that you kind of teed up then, how can using portable storage units help with some of the logistical challenges during a CAT? You mentioned at the beginning that some restorers will maybe pack up some of their equipment and ship it to a local provider and have it stored there, which is a brilliant idea. But what are some other ways that you can help with the logistical challenges of that?
Yeah, great question, Greg. If you don't mind, I love this question. I love talking about this,
you're
right?
good.
Because really what it is not to use a pun here, but it's about thinking outside the box, right? Let's think outside the container. And frankly, let's not look at the portable storage as a container. Let's look at it as a solution and an efficiency creator. That's what I love about it. And we talk about CAT situations, and Greg hit it right on the head. We can load up people's equipment. We can bring it right, you know, if you're up in Minnesota, you're deploying down to Florida, we can load a ton of equipment into a 16-foot container. Our containers can hold up to 8,000 pounds. A lot of stuff can go in there, right? And we can get it down to Florida for you, and then we can deliver it right to wherever you need it. So that is certainly one way that we can assist. And that's a way to create an efficiency, right? You're saving on the gas, even if you do have a semi-truck trailer, right? Those diesel is shooting up out the roof right now, right? And so we can help in that instance. But, you know, there's the obvious hurricanes, right? Those are the big cats we all talk about. But, you know, what we forget about sometimes in the restoration industry, and I might be wrong here, the definition might have changed over the years, but a cat can be any type of event that causes more than $25 million. I think that used to be the number, $25 million worth of damage. So I like to use this example, Michelle. When I was a provider in Northern Illinois, there was always an area. Every time we got like some big rains, it would flood. It would flood. We'd have 150 jobs. We couldn't get to all of them. And the challenge was getting in and out of those areas, right? That was a big challenge. We'd spend 3 hours, you know, you go out, you do 2 jobs, you have to drive back to the facility, and then you have to drive back to the CAT area, right? And there's 3 hours potentially lost right there in downtime or behind the wheel time. So what I like to explain to restoration providers is, what if you could eliminate that downtime? What if you could have a container loaded with equipment, even at a local CAT event. You could have a container loaded at our facility, ready to go at a moment's notice. And you could call a units franchise and say, hey, we have this CAT. We've already talked to a homeowner. They're going to let us put that container out there for 2 weeks. Because, you know, those types of CATs, those localized CATs, usually about 2-3 weeks, maybe they last, right? We're going to have you park that container there. And now what you have is a mobile distribution center, right? You have all your equipment there. You have materials there where you can, instead of driving back and forth all day long to your facility, because you can do about 2 jobs with debris and you're going to have to reload equipment. Instead of going all the way back to your facility, you could go and stop at your, you know, this local distribution center. You can unload your garbage. Most of it's bagged. You put it inside the container for the day. You pull out the extra equipment and supplies that you need, and you go and do an extra job. And at the end of the day, when you're starting to head back for the end of the day, you pick up all the garbage again. You dump it off back at your warehouse, right? But let's just think about that. And now in the Chicagoland area where I used to work, it would last about 7 days, right? These rainstorms, and then the aftermath of it, right? Of actually going out and doing the work, doing the tear out, doing the drying, right? So if I could do one extra job a day at an average of $3,000 per water loss, right? And that's just one crew, one extra job, $3,000 for 7 days. What does that come out to? What, $24,000 roughly? Somewhere in between there, you know, depending on the average you're using. Yep. That's a lot of money. And guess what? Our container costs, maybe with delivery fees, everything else, less than $500 for the month. So $500, $20,000+. One crew though. Multiply that by 4, 5, 6 crews. You're talking about 6-figure returns just by creating an efficiency. Now, beyond that, you know, that's a distribution center it can be used as. Now let's talk about, it can be used as a portable drying chamber, right? It can be used as a portable cleaning station if necessary. If you have big wildfires and it's light soot where you don't necessarily need to bring it back to your facility, right? You can actually set up tables, create a cleaning station. You can use it as a portable deodorization chamber with hydroxyl or ozone. Right. So it's not just a container, it's an efficiency creator. And it's just, again, not to use this, but it's thinking outside the box. Right. And those are just some of the ways we can help in CAT-like situations, whether it be massive hurricanes, local rain events, wildfires. It's all about just thinking, okay, how can I have my crews go do more work or reduce the amount of time that I'm spending downtime, essentially, where I'm not generating revenue as a restoration provider. And this is a way to do that.
Yes. Okay. I love it. Okay. And I've seen pictures of people that have transformed them into drying chambers or deodorization or whatever. So that is a great outside the box use. So, okay, kind of taking off the storage hat here and going a little bit more broad in CAT response. What are some of the mistakes you two like have seen restorers make when it comes to CAT response? Because you've been in other positions as well, not just with units. So as you've been part of these CAT situations over the years, what are some of the weak points you've seen from restorers where they get there and they're maybe not as prepared as they think, or whatever that may be? What are some of the challenges that you see restorers face that they're not expecting?
Yeah, Greg, I definitely can speak to that one, Michelle. So when I was at Lowe's managing all of the C-suite national account relationships, one of the challenges for everyone in the restoration industry, whether it was after Harvey or Irma or whatnot, it's getting into market and then getting those materials. So when I worked in the command center, whenever there was a CAT event for Lowe's, it was this mad rush to get tractor trailer loads of plywood, right? So it's, you know, the prep, then it was the cleanup, then it was the build back, more or less. But getting those materials into those markets is extremely difficult when you have road closures, power outages, cell phones are down. So it's that preparation, you know, in the beginning that's crucial. So again, we'll use the Minneapolis example. Not that someone wants to buy, you know, all their plywood in Minneapolis, but if you're having it shipped to Florida, that truck might be able to make it into Florida, but it might not be able to make it out.
Yeah.
So getting the materials into market is key. And if you're going to be going to any type of CAT event and you're expecting to walk into a Lowe's or a Home Depot and you don't have the tools that you were supposed to bring with you or the materials, you could really lose a lot of business. So prepping yourself prior, Eunice really fits that mold for you perfectly. So that's just another example of what I saw before, as people would get into market. It's a CAT event. Everybody wants to go get the business. And then it's, oh, we can't get the sheetrock, or we can't get the insulation. And it's going to be, look, we all saw what happened after Dallas, right? 3 years ago. Nobody could get plumbing supplies, right? You couldn't get your hands on them. So those are just some of the challenges that restorers probably, I wouldn't say none of them think about. I'm sure many of the larger ones do, but maybe some of the smaller ones, if they want to chase that work, like, all right, maybe we need to prep ourselves, load up prior to going down and not be reliant on the store's inventory that's being exhausted by local homeowners, let alone contractors, right?
That makes me feel like those contractors are going to be bunking up inside their storage unit, because
Right?
if they don't have materials, they probably don't have a hotel, and they're going to be driving hours outside to find somewhere to stay and food. Okay, Chris, go ahead. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Greg hit it right on the head. The only other thing I would add to it is, like just what happened, right? This past hurricane kind of ended up being a big dud. And that does happen from time to time. Yeah. So to send your semi-truck trailers down there, to send all your labor force down there, I've often heard $50,000 is a minimum to mobilize, right? That's like a number that I've heard a lot of. When we worked at ServiceMaster, I used to hear it from a lot of their great franchises all the time. Well, if you can help minimize some of those costs or get what you need down there by reducing those costs, and hey, if it doesn't turn into anything, we could ship it right back to you, or we can hold on to it for you at one of our locations in the CAT area, because inevitably something's going to happen. Sure. And if your stuff's already down there, hey, keep it down there and just wait, because it's going to happen.
It's just beginning. I was thinking this last hurricane, I'm like, this is pretty early for a big hurricane to be hitting. It's pretty early in the season. There's still a lot of time to go. Okay, before we wrap it up, I love asking restorers to share some of their favorite industry stories, favorite job stories. So it can be when you were with Units or ServiceMaster or whatever it may be. But I'd love for both of you, in keeping with the CAT conversation, to share a story, like a memorable CAT loss experience on a job site or whatever that may be. So whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, so probably one of my most memorable moments was when I was actually doing the work, right? When I was out there pounding the ground. And, it was my first CAT event. I'm kind of fresh out of college, and work until about 4:00 in the morning in people's basements, doing about 6 or 7 jobs in a day, and just being utterly exhausted. And then doing it the next day and the next day and the next day. But what I always look back on is, and very fondly, is it's tough work. I give a lot of credit to restoration owners, because when cats hit, it's all hands on deck. You got administrators sometimes out there helping pull out wet carpet, right? Setting up drying equipment, monitoring equipment. But what I really love is the fact that you get when you get to help a homeowner. And and really help them in a real tough situation. And so there's not just one specific job that I can say, but I did many CAT events in my time, and and to be able to stabilize someone's home, to make sure that it's not going to get any worse, although it's a major inconvenience for them, to be that team and part of a team that really gets to help people. That's why I love the restoration industry, and that's what kept me going back to it, and has kept me around it for many years. I'm at Units now today, but we're still our biggest B2B client by far is the restoration industry, which is great for Greg and I and our franchises, because we're not the ones going out and doing the work necessarily, but we get to be part of helping them during that very tough situation. And it makes me feel good. And it's a big reason why I'm here at Units, and what we love to do.
Perfect. Greg, you have a favorite story to share?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. So I've been in most CAT events since 2004, so almost 20 years. almost every major hurricane I've been a part of for cat response. And I think the one that stands out the most will always be Hurricane Sandy. So Lowe's deployed me to New Jersey, and to this day, we all know the devastation of Harvey and all the other ones, but I really wasn't expecting to see the catastrophic damage that Sandy had done, because it was just being reported as a Cat 1. And being a remodeler, and having been from New England, I never made that correlation of, well, these houses aren't built to sustain this type of wind damage and this type of water damage. So I remember I landed and we started driving around and getting ready to link up with some of our national account clients. And I remember thinking to myself, this looks like a Cat 4 that came through. I mean, houses were completely washed away, that were along the ocean side, and people had abandoned their houses because water was up 12, 15 feet. So I think that one will always stick with me. They're all awful, right? Katrina, all of them are horrific, but Sandy will always be the one that I really wasn't anticipating that much damage. And it was just a shocker for me. And, my heart goes out to the people that were in New Jersey and New York and everybody that had to go through that, because that was awful. So
that's the thing about cats, right? You just don't know what it's going to be like until it's actually going. I mean, the hurricane can be barreling down on Florida and they're saying it's a Cat 3, 4, whatever. And then it gets on land and it's like, oh, but then a 1 can take things out. So you just never know. Same with wildfires. Oh, they have it under control. Nope, they don't have it under control. Things can explode so quickly. So, okay, gentlemen, well, anything else that either of you want to share before we wrap it up?
No, just, we're always available to our restoration partners. We're easy to get a hold of. Unitstorage.com. We're always available and ready to assist. We are locally owned and operated. That's one of the things that makes us, gives us a major competitive advantage, is that we are locally owned and operated. There's an opportunity for franchise providers to create those relationships at the local level with our owners, and we can respond very quickly to help their needs. So by all means, we're available and we're willing and wanting to help the restoration however you guys see fit. Guys and gals, excuse me.
Guys and gals. Greg, anything else?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll just echo what Chris said, and we're here to help. Both Chris and I came from this industry, whether it's construction and restoration or both, and we want to be able to help all of our national account partners. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. We're here for you.
Awesome. Well, Greg and Chris, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for all the work that you both do in the industry.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle.
For more Restoration Today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.